So what is a virtual visit and how does it look in this hybrid virtual approach? So a virtual visit, very simply put, is a site logging into a platform and having a telehealth call, a two-way video and audio call with a patient who is also on their study device. And then during that visit, which is just like you do on site, we're just doing it through telehealth, we're able to capture e-consent, e-source, in other words, the site is capturing CRFs or other e-source documents, ePro, eCOA, medical devices, surveys, and other assessments can be completed while the site and the patient are on the phone together. So this is what we call a virtual visit. Now, as you look at a virtual visit, just understand that there's really two things going on at once. One is you have the two-way video conference. So that's the two-way communication. It is in a HIPAA-controlled environment so that the data is safe, secure, and not recorded. And then while the patient and the site are having this visit virtually, they're also able to complete activities together. So a PI can ask the patient for data or information and log it in a platform. And then the patient can maybe do mobile spirometry or do a glucometer reading or maybe contribute an ePro or a survey right from their device so that that data instantly shows up in the portal for the site to see. So just like we're doing when we're on site, we're able to shift these different activities to different capture methods that allow us to do this work virtually. So how do you convert these on-site visits to virtual visits? I want to give you a really simple three-step process that doesn't have all the detail, but I think it'll help you sort of work through the process of how to think about your protocol a little bit differently. So the first thing that you do is you take your schedule events, and I've got a very fake schedule of events here, but you can see just some general assessments and some visits. And what we've done in the schedule events is we've looked across the board and we've said, hey, for these assessments, we're not going to allow these to be done virtually. We don't feel comfortable with that happening. And so these are the activities or assessments that will happen on site. So anytime this happens on site, that is going to require us to have that particular activity happen on site. So that is, by its essence, not virtual visit ready. And then we're going to take the flip side, and we're going to look at all the assessments that can be captured virtually. And what I like to say is that the majority of these assessments we have actually can be done virtually. It just really depends on your protocol, the investigators that you're using, and whether or not your organization feels comfortable enough to have these particular assessments done outside of a clinic. But let's just say for point of discussion that these are the assessments that you're willing to do virtually. And they have an equivalent, which means that I can capture this data in one of these virtual methods. And so we label all those as virtual visit ready. And so then the third step is when we overlay those together, we'll see a really clear convergence of week 2, month 3, all those assessments can be done virtually. So why don't we take these particular visits and make them virtual? But again, it still allows for on-site visits that in these cases really are needed. So it gives us a very good hybrid approach that doesn't just start to save cost and time, but also brings a really innovative method that's really a next step towards virtual research in your studies. So what studies are best suited for virtual visits? So the one thing that we've learned in conducting a number of fully virtual clinical trials in phase 3 and phase 4 is that they tend to work really well in specific therapeutic areas like dermatology, ophthalmology, respiratory, some cardiovascular conditions. But the hybrid or the virtual visit approaches really open up a lot more study therapeutic areas and also allow us to put this technique and approach into phase 2, 3, and 4 studies. And so really, when you think about a virtual visit is fairly agnostic to the therapeutic area, because what you're doing is for each protocol or study, you're adding this virtual visit method in a really fit for purpose way, which means in maybe an oncology study in between infusions, there's maybe just 3 visits where this virtual visit would make a lot of sense. But maybe you have a dermatology study where of your 10 visits, 8 visits could be done virtually, and you really only need 2 on site. So this method and this approach gives you a lot of flexibility in the types of trials and the therapeutic areas that it can support. All right, so what technology features are required? So what do you need the technology to do to enable these virtual visits to occur? And so when you look at the different features available, again, going back to there's a two-way video feed and conversation, but there's actually activities happening on both the site's end and the patient's end simultaneously. So frankly, you really need to have the wealth of these features available because you do need to e-consent and you do need to have telehealth, but you also have to have a portal for the sites to see the data as patients enter it so that they can conduct and complete a visit in real time. But also you need to show in-streams of sensor data. So if there's a sensor endpoint that the clinician needs to review, that data has to be available to them during that virtual visit. Other things like ePro and ClinRow and eSource, so data capture forms for the site to complete during the visit, are obviously all requirements. But there are some sort of other features that typically aren't talked about much, which are how do we engage people during these virtual visits? And then how do we also authenticate that the patient is who they say they are during a virtual visit? And so you need to have the different technology features working together to really have a virtual visit that meets the criteria to really move from on-site to fully virtual. If you want to learn more about virtual visits, visit our website at threadresearch.com/walk to learn more.